Yeah, man. I've been making those rock and roll records my entire fucking life. I'd like to get back to that someday. That was a nice video somebody sent me. That's what my amplifiers are now, scratching posts for her. All of them. Yep. I got a stellar history of metal, thrash, punk, rock, even hip hop. I hope somebody has a copy of me and Ronzo and stuff too. Enough for a box set. Enough to base a movie on. Yeah. But the microtonal music system is fairly new in the Western Hemisphere. It's fairly new. It only dates back to the time of the Renaissance era, the 1500s, 1600s, when we, when we finally came up for a system with it. Yeah. For the longest time when I was a kid, I was fascinated on that B string because it's a half step down. There's a half step between E and F and B and C. And when you have a guitar, the B string is down a half step, and it alters the way you play guitar, and it's fitted for tension points on a guitar. I spent a good part of my career breaking up bar chords, trying to get that, you know, trying to make the bar chord align with the gain stage of the amplifier. He said, Ramones, that's what you get. Mostly those are bar or power chords, but a good example would be John Lennon or Bobby Steele with the roots being left off because the gain stage is so fuzzy. Let the bass carry it. So you take your index finger off and you play broken Mel Bay bar chords. That's where the term cowboy chord comes from. Cowboy chords are your G, C, D, E, A, and various seventh chords from basically Gene Autry, the time of toy guitars. Only in the 19 well, starting in the 1920s, you could really buy an acoustic guitar. But up until that point, you just watch cowboys play them in the movies between killing sequences when they sat down for the night and they set up their camp and they sing about their horse and they sing about the land and getting back to their girl. And they're drinking coffee in the desert. Yeah, that's Gene Autry. Those are cowboy chords. And they used to sell little toy guitars for kids in the 50s, 40s, and 50s of little plastic Gene Autry toy guitars with nylon strings. Sometimes they were the most likely they were made of some kind of cheap wood. Then they started, making Formica ones and plastic ones in the 60s and 70s. But the tension on a guitar is what? I'm guessing it's probably about, who knows, somewhere between 80 and 150 pounds. I don't know. I used to know. I forget. But that's a lot of tension, and even more for a bass. The thing about the Hofner, why it doesn't sell so good in America, why it never sold good in America, is because it's an entirely different instrument. It it harkens back to Italian and German designers with a bit of Stradivarius knowledge, and the tension points. Yeah, the tension points on a bass. It's got to be like 200 pounds for nickel strings that we're using here in America all this time. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of tension, as opposed to phosphor and bronze strings you'd use on an acoustic. The Hofner is usually neck through, where that means there's no bolts in the neck. So what they would do to make lightweight strings was they would use one strand of like nickel and coat it in nylon. And they were kind of like reminiscent of toy guitars that you would get from Sears or Montgomery Ward, or Ward's was it called before Montgomery Ward? And just one string, so that's what the pickup would pick up the sound. And that's how you get a Beatles sound, is you have to use nylon electric strings. You can only get them in England. I think they call them, funny enough, they call them black satin now, but they're called pyramid strings. And when you take them out of the case, you notice they're floppy. They're lightweight and they're floppy, and it's half the tension, but they have a certain sound to them. Like a classical guitar would have nylon strings, but no metal in them. When they reissued the Hofner again in the late '90s, or copies of it rather, they had to radically modify the thing so it could hold the tension. There was bolts in the neck. It was mostly solid wood, and you could put nickel bass strings on it. And that's not a Beatle bass. That's not a Beatle sound. You got to get the German, the Italian, or even the one that was made in Asia. I have all three of them. My German one cost the most. It was $750. I got it on sale. It was used. But and when I bought it from the music store, there's like a pack of Ernie balls on the thing. And I'm like, yo, you guys can't. I'm telling at Guitar Center, and these kids have no idea. I'm like, you can't put nickel strings on this Hofner. You got plastic tuning pegs. You know the pegs are plastic, as they should be. Eventually, and that's what happened. To some of mine, the tuning pegs snap the fuck off. The headstock starts to crack. It's a bass from a different time, and the American market doesn't really cater to it. I did this all I did all my research online. But believe me, when you get those, I call them toy strings. They're super expensive, and they're coated in they're black strings, all black, coated in nylon, and one strand of metal down the middle. You'll never forget them. You can fucking fly on them, like it's a classical guitar. You can. It's not. Suddenly, you're not playing a bass anymore. And the neck is short scale and super long. The Hofner allows you to have lightning quick speed, lightning quick precision. You can jump one, two, three fucking octaves on the thing. You have access to the cutaways. You can hit notes. The old and yeah, the pickups, I forget what they call them, but they're like Filtron pickups, sort of. They just react with the nylon and metal in a certain way, and the notes ring out for fucking ever. And it's incredible speed you can get, an incredible rich tone. It's semi hollow. That's why there's a problem with selling those guitars over here. Not even the guitar guys, the luthiers and technicians seem to know that. Every time I go into a music store and I see that, I'm like, you gotta take those goddamn strings off there. You're gonna bust the tuning pegs. It's just way too much tension. And and I mean, you can do the most you could just do the most fucking Motown bass lines, the most incredible you know, six fret jumps, and just incredible shit on it. It's just not a normal bass. It's super light, and it being hollow and having a block in the middle of it where the bridge is, just allows the sound to, like I always call it, make an infinity pattern. The bass feeds back once you get it up to it's super high output. believe it or not. It just reacts with those strings better. And once you turn it up, you can actually pick up the bass, yell into the pickup, and it will come out the amp. It's a piezometric style pickup. But to spend between 80 and $120 for strings, it, that's what you want to do. Otherwise, you're going to destroy a beautiful bass that's been, it's glued together and it's all one piece of wood. You want to make sure that you do not put too much tension on it. And I was able to use those strings for about 2 years, because it's not easy to get them. You have to order them from England. Eventually, they fray at the tops. And then I took the string apart and I examined what it was. Just a thin piece of metal wrapped in nylon. Like if you wiggle your finger, the access to vibrato is better, etc., etc. But for the most part, they're flat wound nylon, electric nylon strings. We don't have that in this country. Most bass players don't even understand the difference. That's what makes it kind of magical. But that ain't my name. They got that from the album cover of Son of Hudson Rock that was on my front porch. That looks like the guy Matt. No. No, that's Son of Hudson Rock. It's the second album after Hudson Rock. It's an Albany thing. That ain't my goddamn name. And shut that fucking voice up that's chanting shut up. Suck at his dick, y'all. But I doubt anybody will appreciate this knowledge unless you play bass, and you probably still won't appreciate it. You know? It's a special, special fucking sound. I miss the days of people stacking potentiometers, push-pull potentiometers, toggles, mini toggles, 9-volt battery sustainiacs, goddamn 14 karat gold strings. Anybody remember those? You put them on your tremolo system, right? And they do sound fucking. I had them. They do sound fucking amazing. 14 karat gold strings. You can bend them, shape them, fucking pull up on the tremolo, pull all the way down till they're hanging like rubber band strings forever. And they don't break. They don't make them anymore. But back in the day when you used to be able to get Gorilla Snot and shit for your guitar or some Mel Bay cleaner, you want to clean your neck, use clarinet bore oil. That's what I always tell people. Or if you want to go fast, make sure and you got a rosewood or alder neck, use clarinet bore oil because the neck gets dry, doesn't it? That's what I do with my Australian guitar, my orange one. That's my bitch. That's the best guitar I ever had. 1960s design, borrowed from Leo Fender. My Italia DeVille. But yeah, no. Do you remember the 14 karat gold strings? They cost $125 back then for a set of 9 or 10s. Oh yeah, that wasn't no joke. Those were actually really good. They would ring out forever. Remember the old overdrive 9-volt battery driven things? Now you see them more in basses these days, which is okay, but it's kind of annoying because the battery dies real quick the second you put the cord in, and you got to change the battery like every week and a half. On my Music Man, it's like that. Even if you bypass the shit, I mean, it's got way too much fucking output. If you can't put that into a phantom power, if you did, you'll blow the fucking head. It's just got way too much output. But I miss when they used to put the EBO circuitry, like an EBO, but they put it in a rail style DiMarzio, or sometimes even a double rail jazz thing. And those shits were great. If you ever had a Sustainiac, you'd know the difference. You can click it on with a mini toggle, or you click it on with a button, or sometimes it's on all the time. And what it does is just sustains notes forever with a 9-volt battery. And that's the shit I used to like. My first guitar had a sustain, or my first real guitar, I like to think, had a Sustainiac in it, and it was great. At low volume, the notes just sing forever, like a fucking ebo. They don't make those anymore, really. You know, when I set up my next tremolo guitar, I'm gonna see if I can get some 14 karat gold strings, an old school Sustainiac, a Floyd Rose Type 3, and some push pull potentiometers that will take it out of phase, take it out of scope, push it over the edge, and maybe give it a little gain, a little drive. But I need I need it to have that phantom power, that bypass mode, where if there's not a 9 volt in it, it'll still play. Usually it's in the back of the guitar. You can unscrew it. You know, guitar's dying. It sucks. I miss the old days where they used to combine MOSFET and tube and trans tube technology. That shit was the best. Where they, or if they were trying to imitate plate reverbs, you could buy a device with a mini plate in it, and they'd send your signal through a little plate, and they'd call it plate reverb. It wasn't nearly as good, but it made an interesting sound. I used to put my vocals through one, and it didn't sound like the Doors' first album, but it did have a nice quality to it. It wasn't that digital reverb that just smacks of fakeness. You can hear the bit depth, you can hear the dithering, you can hear the diffusion of the signal. You know, I even got one of those. I even got a pedal board upstairs that's really great. I got it a few years ago. I haven't fucked with it much, but it's for bass. I want to get it for guitar though, but for bass, it's really great. You can go. It's got a expression pedal, a wah pedal for your foot, or volume swell, whatever you need, and it goes left and right, and it goes up and down. It's fucking amazing. You could do 360-degree effects with it. You know, the first time your foot goes left and right, usually it's up and down. It goes up and down, left and right. And it's got a mini AX11 tube in there that heats up. And when I turned it on at first, I thought it was fake. You know, I'm like, get the fuck out. Well, what the fuck is one AX11 going to do? I unscrewed it, and sure enough, there's a goddamn AX11 tube in there. And it turns purple after a while, when you really heat it up. And it does sound, I can't, I can't explain it, but it does sound really good. And it reminds me of the 80s when everything was like that. This is a hybrid. Or like when recording studios went AD, like analog digital, hybrid, it just makes a certain sound that is unique, you know? I need me a pedal board that is rugged, that can take a goddamn beating, that never. I'm wondering what happened to a Digitech. I don't think they're around anymore. Division of DoD, Digitech. They used to make, or even Boss is good. I gotta get me a new Boss pedal, something that could take a fucking beating, where the expression pedal doesn't get scratchy, and it stays calibrated. When you drop octaves, the shit won't. It'll only go 11 notes, and you're like, come on, hit the 12, go an octave, and it won't do it. And you have to recalibrate the fucking thing, and then you have to put it in the fucking computer, and it's like, no, this is my $700 pedal. I don't want it on this promiscuous HIV internet. But the shit was getting really interesting for a while. The shit Digitech was making. I loved my Digitech back in the day. It was as close to as any ghetto kid can get to professional sound. And, of course, I wanted Zoom. I wanted Boss. But Digitech really bring it home to me. They're like, here's some really good shit. You know, we make we make our own little gonculators. And my whole life has been a DoD pedal. You know, from the time I discovered compression and started singing through a compressor pedal. And well, somebody was talking about that before. Yeah, when I was a kid, Dominic's still alive, but I had a dream. He came to me in a dream with an MXR Dynacomp in his hand, a dynamic compressor, and he said to me, something, you might want to use this. And it was strange because he's not deceased, he's still alive. And so I went out within that month and got myself my first or my second, pedal, and it was the Dynacomp, and it turned out it was the greatest fucking pedal in the world. It takes the peaks and squashes them, and it takes the quiet shit and pushes it up so it makes consistent volume. Those were the fucking days. Before we started using the Saldano, which is a great Italian amp, it's all tube, luscious sound, luscious, clean, powerful. We were using a PV trans tube, and boy, I mean, I gotta say that shit sounded good back then. It sounded sort of like a tube amp. It had that breakup, and it sounded really good on fucking tape if you took a 57 and placed the microphone correctly. But my thing as a kid was trying to fucking was taking a bunch of ARTs. I'd get an ART every year. I'd go down with my mother, pick out a used one for $50, and I'd have three of them in my room hooked up to my 4-track. And I was trying to create the Gold Star echo chamber when I was 15 or 16, or recreate the reverb at Real Platinum Studios. That was my thing when I was a kid. And I can never get close. I can get the Beatles. I can get the math down, but nothing compares to a reverb tank. You know. Another thing that's changed is there's no more. I like surf music a lot, and I like reverb springs. They don't really make amps with reverb springs anymore. Yet nobody can replicate the sound. If you had a gig tonight as Dick Dale, I can play it. You found the guy to play it. But there's a caveat. Do you have the Fender reverb tank in there? No. Well, it's not even worth it. I got my Stratocaster, I got my whammy bar, but we need some reverb springs. I wish guitar and music would come back. Boy, it's getting fucking hot in here. I mean, what was as grand as your first echo pedal? The most expensive of all pedals, right? What was better than that? I mean, I had some DoD thing, and it only allowed like slapback, like 75 milliseconds. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's Elvisy, but I want to play along with the Dead Kennedys, man. I want to get some echo. I want to space out and get 60s with it. Then I got my first 8-second sampler. It was a big fucking deal in 1992. That was a big fucking deal. It was a big Digitech pedal, and it had a full 8 seconds of echo. They called it a sampler, and that's what I used it for. That was the trick that set me apart from all the other hip hop guys when I wasn't doing rock and roll, is I had the ability to sample. You know, and I told you this story before. Me and I figured it out when I was with Ron from reading a Beatle book. How to sync two turntables together by using a fucking speaker wire and connecting the servo motors. And it works. It works really good. It gives you a power flux, but it you know, when I make hip hop, I could sit there and the people used to be in awe of me. They'd be like, "Wow." Back when you used to use records in the 90s, they were still using them. And then we figured out how to do it at KSR with two 4-track reel-to-reels. But that didn't work so good. The motor died on one. But for a couple minutes, we had them completely in sync by using because Tim was a physicist, and he understood how to do it. And that's what we did before we MIDI time coded them together. That's what I'm thinking about with that Beatles shit, because when you don't have good equipment, you try that much harder, and you'll do anything to get to that place. My favorite echo pedal though of all time was when I first got the Danelectro Backtalker, the reverse echo pedal. Tim got it for me one year for my birthday, in 2003 or something. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, now I can be like Vernon Reid and play backward guitar in real time. Then we mixed it in with an octave pedal. Nobody really got to hear that era though, but it was great. We were starting to branch out more. I had a new Laney half stack that I got from Alan Payette at Hermes. I had my octave pedal. I had my reverse echo pedal, and we were on our way. I see that THA car come by every day. I wish I was back there. I wish I was back at Troy Housing Authority. Those were some of the best days of my life musically. My girlfriend just left me after 13 years, and I had my Yamaha keyboard, my $100 Yamaha keyboard. I had my little pedals. I had my Mary Kay Bullet Strat, and I was fucking, and I was satisfied. I had my Surfcaster and my first Hofner, and there was no reason to leave the house. Neighbors used to pound on the wall. Shut the fuck up. I'd be doing it all night. I miss those days. I want to get back to that. The absolute privacy of the Troy Housing Authority, which wasn't very private, but compared to this, yeah, it was a fucking resort.